Okay, so last year around September, October, November, I had a mutual friend. His name was Nigel B. Murray. Fast forward to December 19th, we met each other again. We said hi and everything, and we're like, hey, let's exchange numbers so we can, get in touch maybe. We decided to link up and talk to each other. So at that time when we were talking, Nigel invited me to do a job with him. Nigel had a brand deal with TCL. And so, but part of that brand deal, he needs to show off what TCL was showing off at CES. And that brand deal also came with the invitation for him at a TCL mixer. So while I was there, I met with this guy named Ben. I went up to Ben and I'm asking him, like, hey, is that a C300? She's like, yeah, it's a C300. And after that fact, Ben just started going off. I'm like, wow, Ben. Like, okay, I'm not being rude here, but he actually started spitting some knowledge here that I could use. And he said something that kind of sparked my inspiration for this video. He pretty much said, when it comes to shooting a video, everybody would usually ask the question at first, what camera are we going to use? And Ben said, instead of asking what camera we should use, it should be what lens should we use? That completely just like flipped things around for me. So Ben, if you're watching this video, thank you for the inspiration. So that's exactly what I want to do in this video. I want to tell you guys about lenses. But the difference about this video and other videos is I'm going to try to make it shorter and more entertaining. There are people all around the world that for some reason want to get more into photography or videography. And the truth is, it's more easier to do so now more than any other time. So this video is for the people who just want to get into photography / videography, or just for the people who want to solidify their foundation of their knowledge about lenses. So we're going to have 3 sections in this video: how a lens works, types of lenses, and what to look for in a lens. Okay, to start it off, I want to talk about how a lens exactly works. You may have heard that it works similarly to the human eye, and I would like to say so too. You know how the human eye adjusts to how much light is there? So if you're to walk into a room filled with white light, your pupil gets smaller because it's trying to suck in less light because there's already a lot of light around it. But if you're to walk into a room with darkness, your pupils will get larger. It's kind of suck in more light. Now that's kind of how it is and how you want to work the camera lens. So when you're somewhere where there's a lot of light, you're going to want to adjust your exposure so your camera lens can't suck in so much light. You're trying to reduce the amount of light the camera lens is getting. Now going on to the sensor of the camera, this I would like to say works as the retina of the eye. All right, I'm going to try to say this right. I get it wrong every single time. So the human retina converts the light that your eye gets and it converts it into electronic signals that your optic nerve sends to your brain that creates the image that you see. I think I got that right. Which is crazy how you think about it. It's like, what the heck? Now think about how a camera sensor works. You need your camera sensor, like you need your retina. Now inside a lens is what we call lens elements. So these lens elements are either convex or concave type of lenses that bends the light so it can eventually hit the focal point of your camera sensor. That creates the image. And of course, different lenses have a different amount of lens elements in different groups. Focal length is the distance between the optical center of the lens when the lens is focused at infinity, meaning the furthest focus it can go, and the camera sensor, hence why it is measured in millimeters. Now, one thing I want to point out that most people may not know, when it comes to a zoom lens, you're not actually zooming into an image. It's actually just magnification. You see, there's a lens element in between your lens, and this lens is moving back and forth. When you zoom back and forth, it's moving the lens element back and forth. It's like putting a magnifying glass to your eye, moving it back and forth. You actually thought you're zooming in. Look at this guy. He thought he was zooming in. Oh my gosh. So that's a quick rundown of how lenses work. Now that you know that, let's go on to the type of lenses. So we're starting off with ultra wide angle lens or fisheye lenses. If you guys don't know what a fisheye lens, it's like the lens that's super wide and has the distortion on the side so you can see a large part. We got regular wide angle lens, standard or medium angle lenses, telephoto lens. There are many more types of lenses out there, just like a whole new category of lenses. Now, a kit lens is not a specific category of lenses. It's just a lens with a name called kit lens with that title of kit. But what a kit lens is a lens that comes with the camera. But usually these lenses tend to have some sort of drawback. For example, looking at my Canon R7, the kit lens that came with the R7 was a zoom lens with a focal length of 18mm to 150mm. That's a huge focal length range, right? That would be great. You can go from that wide angle all the way to like that telephoto angle. That would be great to have. But like I said, it came with its drawbacks. It was a pretty slow lens with a variable maximum aperture of 3.5 to 6.3. This variable maximum aperture part means that at 18 millimeters, your maximum aperture can be 3.5. If you're to zoom in with the lens, that 3.5 aperture will go all the way up to 6.3. It's a variable maximum aperture. You can't be at 3.5 at 150 millimeters. It just doesn't work. Occasionally though, you'll find a pretty good kit lens, like the one that comes with the Canon R5C. It's a pretty fast lens, 24 to 70 with a maximum aperture of 2.8. Now it's not like you're only able to get these lenses with these specific cameras. No, you can of course get these lenses by itself. Now we're going to transition into what you should look for in lenses. All right, now the main question you want to ask when looking for your camera lens or looking for a camera in general, what are you going to be doing with the lens? This matters highly. I said this in how to choose a camera video. Now, when you're choosing your camera, there's one main thing that you need to question to yourself, and that is, what are you going to be doing with the camera? This question matters a lot, actually. From that point on, it'll tell you everything else that you need, everything else that you want to kind of aim for. For example, are you going to be shooting a social media video, or are you going to be shooting some stuff that are more upscale? I guess what I'm trying to say more so in that kind of aspect, are you going to be using a cinema lens, or are you going to be using a photo lens? Do you need a big heavy cinema lens, or can you just go with a smaller photo lens? If you're a one-man team, are you going to be putting up with that manual focus on the cinema lenses, or do you just want to go autofocus? What I'm trying to say is that there's a difference between the two, of a cinema lens and a photography lens, mainly with how they look and how they perform, and of course how much they cost. I mean that's like a huge difference. So for example, a cinema lens could tend to have 2 to 3 different rings, one for manual focus, one for iris, and one for zoom. But the fact that it has so many rings on it actually gives you more flexibility and even accuracy. When it comes to autofocus lenses, which are a majority of photo lenses, these autofocus lenses have these gold pins on the back. Now these gold pins are actually a way so the lens can transfer information to the camera. So when you change the aperture on your camera, it transfers the information to the lens, and the lens knows what the aperture should be. Now when it comes to a manual lens, you don't have those gold pins, so you have to do everything manually. You get it? It's all coming together now, huh? Speaking on Canon lenses, you have to think about the motors. If you have an on-camera mic, you're gonna have some noises from the vibrations from the motors in their autofocus lens. There's different motors that have different types of noise levels, really. You have HSM, STM, and USM. Now going on to the second question, spherical or anamorphic? Spherical lenses could be more sharper, better for showing off the realness of something. Spherical lenses are probably what the typical beginner in photography would be used to. Now, of course, anamorphics have different looks than sphericals. With anamorphics, focus roll-offs are smoother or softer. This means that the subject of your image will have that smoother transition into the background. With sphericals, it can almost look like your subject is cut and pasted onto the background. Now, another thing anamorphic lenses are favored for is the type of light flares that it gets when light kind of directly hits the camera lens. The bokeh on an anamorphic lens also have a different shape. Now though, with anamorphics though, you have to worry about the squeeze factor it has. They really get their name from the lens elements that are inside the lens. At the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of the lens. It has these different shaped glass other than convex or concave shape. It really just squeezes the image together. So when you take it into an editing process, you are to de-squeeze it, pull it back out, showing that all that information that is captured. Now it can range from 1.33, 1.6, 1.66, 2 times. Different anamorphic lenses have different squeeze factors. Okay, so next question, what type of camera sensor do you have? Well, we have 3 main types of camera sensors. You have full frame, APS-C or crop sensor, and MFT, micro four thirds. Now, full frame is like the default sensor. You get the full thing. So if you were to put on a full frame camera lens that goes with a full frame camera sensor, you'll get the lens's full attributes. Now, APS-C sensors, on the other hand, are called crop sensors for a reason. It's like the cropped full frame lens, but it's cropped. Let's say you're to take a full frame lens and put it on that crop sensor. What would happen? You're going to have to take account of the crop factor factor. Now this crop factor is telling you how much zoomed in you will be when you're putting a full frame lens on. With Canon, it is 1.6. I think with Sony and everything else, it's 1.5. But if we're to go more in depth, we'll see that we're actually getting a loss of quality. This full frame lens that is meant for a full frame sensor, it's getting all this light onto your crop sensor. This crop sensor can't take in all of this light and all this information that this full frame lens is giving out. On the plus side, Super 35 sensors are cheaper and you get more magnification than you wanted. If you don't want to take account of crop factor and everything, you want to get something for your camera, what would be better for you is to get an APS-C lens. That will be better for you because it is perfectly compatible. Now we have another sensor that's even smaller than the crop sensor, which is called Micro Four Thirds or MFT. Now with MFTs, it's the same concept between full frame and crop factor, except the crop factor with MFTs are 2 times. So just remember that there are specific lenses for specific camera sensors. You can fit full frame on a crop sensor, you can fit a crop sensor on an MFT, but just remember that there may be a slight loss of quality if you try to mix batch it up. Now, can we put a crop lens on a full frame camera sensor? You can, but you'll have vignetting. And if you still want to use a lens, the only way you can get rid of that vignetting if it's zoom in. It's just important that you understand the concept. Now another question, what mount type does your camera have? If you ever looked at a camera lens and where it's mounted, you'll see the screws and kind of the formation of like the whole frame of the lens itself and how you put it on. That frame is different for each group of cameras, each brand. If you have a Sony mirrorless camera, then it'll be an E mount. If you have a Canon mirrorless camera, which will be the Canon R line, then you have an RF mount. If you have a Canon DSLR camera, it'll probably be EF or EFS mount. If we're looking at cinema cameras, it'll probably be a PL mount, an LPL mount, an EF mount. Each brand has their own different lens mount because they all want to be different so bad. Now the next question to ask is, what focal length do you want in your lens? Do you want a zoom lens or do you want a prime lens? Let me just say, if you are just getting into this, you're just getting your first camera lens, get a zoom lens. There is no reason for you to get a prime lens unless you're on a budget. You have a different focal length all in one lens that replace 2 or 3 prime lenses. They're convenient, more versatile. If you want a zoom lens that is fast, that will be more expensive. Although, here's the drawback, you know, everything has drawbacks. These lenses are more acceptable to distortion or loss of quality at maximum focal length, especially with those telephoto lenses that reach all the way up to 500 millimeters or even more. But that's where prime lenses come in. If you get a prime 500 millimeter lens, it'll look way better than the zoom lens that goes up to 500 millimeters. It's gonna be more restrictive. They're less expensive though, sharper. Now let's talk about that fast glass, those fast lenses, aperture and iris. The higher in focal length you go, the more expensive it'll be if you want faster glass. So if you're looking at a telephoto lens that goes up to like 300 millimeters, 500 millimeters, and you're trying to get the aperture to be like f2.8, that's your pocket. There goes your bank account. It's just that relationship between the focal length and the aperture are one of the key parts that will determine how expensive this lens you're getting may be. Now, the final thing, let's look at lens diameter. You need to know your lens diameter when it comes to filters or matte boxes or hoods or lens caps even. Oh my gosh, it got so dark to the point where this is... I made it, you made it to the end of the video. I had to switch batteries in between the video. It's getting darker outside. Oh, I really appreciate you if you stuck around to this part. This stuff right here is stuff that most people don't really know. Also, let me know in the comments, what did you guys just find out in this video? If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing, liking, or even commenting. All right, my R7 is on the brink of exploding, so I'm gonna head out. And all the types of lenses out there that I just listed. We got